Notre Dame didn't just beat Syracuse on Saturday, they flat out broke Syracuse. The Irish sent a loud message to the playoff committee and really the rest of the country that they are clearly one of the best teams in college football, and it came at the perfect time. Sunday Night Live starts right now.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome in to Sunday Night Live here on Locked On Irish, your daily home for Notre Dame football. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is now the #1 sports podcast network in America, all thanks to your support, and we really do appreciate it. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I graduated from Notre Dame. I am now a producer at Fox Sports, and I've been covering the Irish for the last 5 seasons, and I've covered a lot of games. I've watched a lot of games as a fan, and I have never seen a game quite like the one we saw on Saturday when Notre Dame beat Syracuse 70-7. Thank you to everyone who is tuning in live on Sunday night, November 23rd. And if you're catching us on Monday, thank you for making this your first watch or listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. And before we get started, I'd really appreciate it if you would check and make sure that you are subscribed on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the podcast, because it is free. It helps you stay up to date on our daily coverage of Notre Dame football, and it really helps the channel grow. So tonight, we're breaking down a game that, honestly, it didn't even feel real at the beginning of the game. Notre Dame annihilated Syracuse. They won 70-7. It honestly should have been 70-0 if not for a garbage time touchdown in the final seconds against the third stringers. And Marcus Freeman said it in the postgame, and I agree with him. I have never seen a game quite like that one. It didn't just feel like a win. It almost felt like a comedy at certain points because of how the Irish completely dominated a Syracuse team that is a Power 4 program. They won 10 games last year. They're in the ACC, and Notre Dame reduced them to a JV high school team on Saturday. I've just never seen anything like that. So we're going to try to make sense of what actually happened on the field. Then we're going to hand out some game balls and run through the top plays of the day. And let me tell you, there are a lot to choose from. So we're going to go over all of those. Then we're going to wrap things up with what this win means for the Irish moving forward because, because it wasn't all perfect. They did suffer a really tough blow with Kyngstonn Viliamu-Asa's season-ending injury. We're also going to look at what happened across college football on a pretty tame weekend. There was not a ton of chaos, which actually works in Notre Dame's favor, as I see it, as they try to make their push back toward the college football playoff. There were a couple key results there that could impact Notre Dame's playoff path, but we're going to get all of that to segment 3. Also, if you're in the chat, feel free to chime in with some questions as well. We're going to get to those in segment 3. We've got a couple people chiming in here. I love when they mention where they're from. Connor is watching live from Michigan City, Indiana. Rick Doyle watching live from Columbus, Ohio, 5 minutes away from the Horseshoe. So, Rick, I understand living in enemy territory. I get what that's like. I'm about 25 minutes away from the Coliseum here in Los Angeles. Actually watched the end of the Oregon-USC game with some USC fans and felt a little bit weird rooting for USC, but they were not able to pull off the win against Oregon. But again, we're going to get to that stuff in segment 3. Let's talk about this win over Syracuse, because I honestly did not think that Notre Dame would be able to make a statement to the playoff committee or to college football, even if they blew out Syracuse, but I was wrong. That was an emphatic message to everyone in college football that the Irish are clearly an elite team. It's rare that you can make a statement against a 3-7 team, but Notre Dame did exactly that. As I mentioned, Syracuse beat Clemson this year. They won 10 games last year. I understand they don't have Steve Angeli, and they have been a mess trying to figure out anything offensively ever since Steve Angeli went down. But still, that is a semi-competent team. I think that's fair to say. And Notre Dame just flat out embarrassed them. And Miami beat this same Syracuse team without Steve Angeli as the starting quarterback 38-10. And it was 14-0 at halftime. And since Miami fans love bringing up the fact that Notre Dame was only leading NC State 10-7 at halftime, and then Miami ended up winning that game by 5 more points than Notre Dame did, but yet somehow that's become a big talking point for them. I'm curious how often they're going to bring up the Syracuse game, because that's a common opponent, and Notre Dame was up 49-0 at halftime against Syracuse, as opposed to 14-0 for Miami. But we'll talk about Miami later on. Notre Dame had to put up some style points in this game, and they did a little bit more than that. They set the tone on the opening drive with Jalen Stroman's pick six, and they just never took their foot off the gas. They were up 21-0 before CJ Carr even stepped on the field. I was joking at one point, does CJ Carr even need to play? Could they just bench him? Could they just run out there with Kenny Minchey in the twos for the entire game? They'd still win by a lot. But it was literally the most ridiculous box score I've ever seen. So let's run through a couple stats here that I think personify just how ridiculous of a game this was and why we're never going to forget it. So here's a couple that stand out to me. Notre Dame had more points, 70, than they did passing yards, 67. Syracuse won the time of possession battle, 41-10 to 18-50, and they still lost by 63 points. Syracuse ran 80 plays to Notre Dame's 39. So they ran double the amount of plays that Notre Dame did. That amounted to 7 points. Again, garbage time touchdown at the very end. Second week in a row that Notre Dame gave up a touchdown in like the last play of the game. So that's kind of annoying. Although I think the circumstances with Fran Brown's group were a little bit different than Pat Narduzzi, but still, it was annoying. And I love that the crowd was getting into it, chanting defense and stuff. They really wanted a shutout. I predicted a shutout in the preview. Unfortunately, that did not get home, although I think we're all going to be okay with a 63-point win. But let's get back to the stats because we've got more for you. The Irish offense averaged a first down on every single play. They averaged over 10 yards per play at 10.15, and the Irish defense had as many tackles for loss as Notre Dame's offense had pass attempts. The Irish were up 35-0 at the end of the first quarter, and they had the ball on the 1 yard line. So if they had one more play, they would have been up 42-0, and they would have been on track to score over 160 points in the game. I put this on Twitter. Like, if Notre Dame decided that they wanted to, they could easily have put up 100 points. They could have won that game 100-0. Fortunately for Fran Brown, Marcus Freeman respects him enough to not do that. He put the second string in like the third quarter early on. So they basically played an entire second half with the backups. And in that half, they still outscored Syracuse 21-7. Overall, it was just a historic game, a weird game. I'm never going to forget it. And I made the point earlier in the week that as annoying as it may be for us Notre Dame fans to deal with all the outside noise and everything that people have been saying about Notre Dame because they're ranked 9th in the college football playoff rankings and because Miami fans and just other college football fans are upset that Notre Dame is ranked where they are. Like, yeah, it's annoying to deal with, right? But Marcus Freeman and his team relish that, and they respond accordingly, and I think we saw that once again on Saturday because as the noise about Notre Dame continues to get louder, this team plays better. They're clearly hearing it. They're probably not thinking about it all that often, but when they go out there to take the field, they have a point to prove. It didn't show that way against Boston College, but ever since then, man, this team has just been dominating every single team that they face, and they took it to an entirely new level on Saturday that I literally did not think was possible. So we can debate resumes. That's fine, because Notre Dame doesn't have a bulletproof resume. I think even the most staunch Notre Dame fans can agree that you could poke holes in Notre Dame's playoff resume. That is true. But you cannot say in good faith that Notre Dame is not one of the 12 best teams in the country, and they proved it once again on Saturday. And even though Syracuse is just 3-7, now they're 3-8. What Notre Dame did to them was unlike anything I've ever seen. It was unlike anything a lot of other people have ever seen. To just embarrass a Power 4 program like that is just remarkable, one, and it really does send a message because if you tried to nitpick that game at all, like if that was the plan going into it, you're like, okay, Notre Dame is playing Syracuse. Maybe they're going to be sleepwalking because it's Syracuse, it's senior day. Maybe the emotions will get the better of the players. Like that did not happen. The Irish have now won 9 straight games, all of which by double digits. And like I said, this one could have been triple digits if they wanted to, and they now are going to have 2 ranked wins on Tuesday night because even though USC lost to Oregon, I still think they're going to be ranked in the top 25, so that's still a ranked win. And I think Pitt is going to be back in the top 25 after they knocked off a 9-1 Georgia Tech team on the road. So for Notre Dame to go out there and put up a performance like that when they have a lot more eyeballs on them right now because people want to ridicule. They want to find more reasons why Notre Dame should not be on the college football playoff. So with all that added attention, what do? They put up one of the most lopsided performances in Notre Dame program history and honestly modern college football history. So I can't say enough about what they did on Saturday. It wasn't just the offense, it was the defense, it was the special teams, it was everyone. And then just when you thought they couldn't do more when they took the starters out, guess what? They put up more points on the board. They made more plays on defense. So that shows you the type of depth that this team has. They're not just like loaded at the top with stars, which they clearly have, and guys like Jeremiyah Love and Leonard Moore, both of whom found the end zone in this one. They are stacked at every single position, and now they're really starting to hit their stride at some positions that I was frankly a little bit concerned about a couple weeks ago, like on the offensive line after the injuries they've been dealing with, right? But it looks like they're going to get Billy Strouth back in the college football playoff, and they were creating holes during this game that you and I could have run through. And then on defense, had a little bit had some concerns about the interior without Gabriel Rubio, but then Jason Onye has been playing sensational as of late. He had one of his best games of this season. So really, it's hard to find weakness with this team. And like I said, you can debate resumes, but you cannot debate just how good this Notre Dame team is. And they put that on full display on Saturday in a game in which they won by 63 points. And anyone who watched that at one point probably felt a little sorry for that Syracuse team because of just how badly it was going for them. But you have to be extremely impressed with what Notre Dame did against an overmatched opponent. Yeah, but that's still a Power 4 team, and they ran all over them from the opening kick. So that was just an unbelievable game. I don't have much more to say about the bigger picture context of what that game means because it was just so lopsided and it was never, ever in doubt. But in a game that was that lopsided, there were plenty of guys who made it happen. So let's turn the page from the chaos and get to handing out some game balls and breaking down the plays that turned this into an absolute avalanche. That's coming up next right here on Locked On Irish. Today's episode is brought to you by Wayfair. The holiday season is right around the corner, and that means it's time to get your home ready. Whether you need more seating for guests, cozy new linens, or fun serveware for holiday hosting, Wayfair's Black Friday sale is here to help you make your space shine. And the best part, you don't have to wait. Wayfair's Black Friday deals are happening all month long with up to 70% off everything from sofas to spatulas. I recently upgraded my living room using Wayfair, and it completely transformed my apartment. I couldn't believe how fast everything shipped just in time for the holidays. Browsing through their site, it's easy to find pieces that actually fit my style. Nothing generic, just quality designs that feel personal. If you've ever hosted family for the holidays, you know how much a difference a few new touches can make, and Wayfair makes that easy. Don't miss out on early Black Friday deals. Head to wayfair.com now to shop Wayfair's Black Friday deals sale for up to 70% off. That's WAYFAIR.com. Sale ends December 7th. Welcome back to this Sunday Night Live edition here on Locked On Irish. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. Thanks again for everyone who's tuning in live, or if you're making this your first watch or listen of the day. Really appreciate everyone who is joining us here, and also wanted to thank you for helping get Locked On to become the #1 sports podcast network in America. We really do appreciate your support. Let's see what the chat is talking about here. Oh, wow, it is active tonight. I love to see that. We got Sean Baker who's watching from Amarillo, Texas. Wow, here we go. Tatiana London, that was my first ever game, and I'm glad I went. What a way to set the tone. Unfortunately, I don't think any other game you go to is going to be quite like that one. But man, that was good. We also got Brian Schmidt, who said, so glad I was able to be in the stadium for this one. Epic. And I agree. And also, for all of you who did make the trip this weekend, let me know how it was, because as I mentioned in the mailbag, when Luke Smith comes on the show Tuesday, as he does every week during the regular season, we always start with his boots on the ground report, and we're going to get a good one this week because he was at the game, he was in attendance, as he almost always is. But now we also want all of you to chime in and send your boots on the ground report, and be creative, be entertaining, because we're going to pick the best one and we're going to read it on the show. And if you want to submit yours, you can do it the same way you send in a mailbag question. You can submit yours in the YouTube comments. Hit me up on X at Locked On Irish, or on Instagram at Locked On Irish Pod. DM either account, either one works. Or if you want to send it to Luke directly, Hit him up on X at ThatSmith15. All right, let's get into the top plays from this game. And there's about like 30 I can choose from, but let's go over the main ones. We got to start with the Jalen Stroman pick six. Did you know that was Jalen Stroman's first interception of his college career? And it came during a great moment because, look, Jalen Stroman has not lived up to the expectations that he probably set for himself when he started and when he transferred over to Notre Dame for his last college football season. He transferred over from Virginia Tech. I think Notre Dame had higher hopes for him that he would be the starter next to Adon Schuler, but Tay Johnson has taken over that starting job and he has ascended. He's playing like one of the best players in the country, but he suffered a hand injury in practice on Thursday of last week, I believe. So he was out for the Syracuse game. He's going to be out for the Stanford game as well. I didn't love seeing Tay Johnson in a sling, but post-game, Marcus Freeman said that Tay Johnson is going to be back. But you know what I did love about Tay Johnson? I've never seen a Notre Dame player more iced out than Tay Johnson. That man has all kinds of jewelry, and I understand that NIL is a big thing in college football, and a lot of guys have chains now. Well, Tay Johnson had about 7, and me and my buddy Tommy were laughing. Those are hilarious, right? Especially for a redshirt freshman. But hey, man, it's a different era of college football, and Tay Johnson has certainly earned his money this season with the way that he has played. But Jalen Stroman comes in. This is his first start since he was benched during the Texas A&M game for Tay Johnson, And I'm sure it's been a really tough year for him, man. Like, he didn't play any defensive snaps against USC. He's played here and there ever since then, getting like 10 to 15 snaps a game. But for him to go out there, get the start, and then make a play on the opening possession was just awesome. And then for him to make the pick and then return it for a touchdown, I was so happy for him. His last home game at Notre Dame Stadium, that had to be such a surreal moment. But then he followed that up with a blocked punt that was caught by Luke Talich, and he returned it for a touchdown. So I actually don't know how they rule that in the stat sheet, because technically Luke Talich returned that, even though it was set up by the block by Jalen Stroman. But either way, it's about time that Notre Dame got home on one of those punts, because they obviously had the blocked punt against Texas A&M at the start of the year, and they like to be very aggressive trying to get after the punter, but they just have not been able to get home. They've been able to disrupt punts, and I'm sure that it's not easy being an opposing punter going up against Notre Dame. Syracuse was doing that thing where they'd huddle up and then they'd line up quickly and then try to get the ball off as quickly as possible so that Notre Dame couldn't adjust based on their formation. But they were able to get home, effective punt, and then Luke Talich making a great one-handed catch and then returning it for a touchdown. So 2 great plays right off the bat. And then Leonard Moore gets a pick 6. It was the first touchdown of Leonard Moore's career, and now Notre Dame is up 21-0. CJ Carr has not even stepped on the field. Something I noticed as an aside in this game, Syracuse targeted Leonard Moore a lot. And then I went back and looked it up after the game on Pro Football Focus, and they did. They targeted Leonard Moore 5 times. That's more than any other player in the Notre Dame secondary. Bold strategy, Cotton. It did not play out well for the Syracuse Orange and quarterback Joe Filardi, who is just in hell from the opening start. I felt bad for him. He didn't really sign up for that, I bet, when he decided that he was going to walk on the football team, because he's a lacrosse player at Syracuse. He's from Long Island. He's like, yeah, man, I'll play football. I'll probably be a backup quarterback. Well, how about you go out there and start against a very hungry Notre Dame team who had been playing like one of the best teams in the country, especially on defense? Like, that's probably not what he wanted to do when he signed up for the football team, but that's what he had to deal with. He ended up throwing 3 interceptions in that game, and they started just flip-flopping back and forth with the quarterbacks. But then Leonard Moore goes out there. He gets a pick 6. Well, then the offense finally got their chance to come out on the field, and it took them 2 plays to score a touchdown. CJ Carr had a nice little comeback route to Jordan Faison, incredibly easy throw that we have seen a bunch this year, and then Jeremiyah Love scored a 45-yard touchdown on his first touch of the game. In that moment, I was ready for Notre Dame to bench Jeremiyah Love. Like, considering the game was already over, my only concern was injuries. I was like, look, Notre Dame's won this game. They're going to get up a bunch of style points. Like, do they really need Jeremiyah Love to be out there all that often? Well, they didn't, but we'll get back to Jeremiyah Love, because they took him out on the next series, and then Jadarian Price, it was his turn to score a 58-yard touchdown run. And our guy, Greg Famung from Irish Sports Daily, he posted a Twitter of the hole that Jadarian Price ran through on the play. He made a great comment like, Jadarian Price had to get skinny through the hole. I'm telling you, you could have driven a semi-truck through that. You or I are probably not scoring on that play. I think that we'll leave that to Jadarian Price, but we're getting 5 yards, okay? The hole was that big, so credit to the Notre Dame offensive line for setting that up. And then later on, Will Pauling had a 6-yard touchdown reception. That dude just knows how to find the end zone, man. And this was probably the easiest one he's had to score all season long, because it was 3rd and goal. They ran that rollout play that they love, where Will Pauling runs the out, and then you got Malachi Fields on the outside. He runs like a post just to clear out that defender in man coverage. Pauling, easy throw and catch from C.J. Carr. He gets into the end zone. And then Notre Dame goes into the half. They're up 49-0. I didn't expect to see the starters at all in the second half of this game, but they were like, you know what? Jeremiyah Love needs a little bit more to help out his Heisman campaign. He had a 14-yard touchdown run. He also had a 68-yard touchdown run in the second half. I was wrong. The 14-yard touchdown run was in the first half, but in the second half, he comes out, 68-yard touchdown run. He does the Heisman pose. He finishes with 8 carries, 171 yards, and 3 touchdowns, but the scoring did not stop there. The backups came in, and if the backups come in, what does that mean? Aeneas Williams is out there at running back. And what does Aeneas Williams do? He scores touchdowns. He doesn't get on the field a lot, but when he does, he gets the ball and he scores a touchdown. And he scored a 30-yard touchdown run in this one. And then Kenny Minchey had a 25-yard touchdown run as well. He also had a 34-yard run in this game where they just ran a simple read option. The Syracuse defense didn't take the fact that Kenny Minchey could run into account, and he had a really nice back-to-back runs in this game, not in consecutive plays, but still 2 very nice plays, and that's like something that we've come to expect from Kenny Minchey. We know that he can run, but apparently Syracuse didn't read the scouting report on him. Minchey actually finished as the 3rd leading rusher on the team, 2 carries, 59 yards, and a touchdown run. Really cool for him to get in the end zone because, look, I don't know what Kenny Minchey's career holds at Notre Dame, but that might be his last game at Notre Dame Stadium. We'll see what ends up happening after the season or if Notre Dame ends up hosting a college football playoff game, but for Kenny Minchey to go out there and have that moment, I thought was really cool. And then it looked like they were going to have another pick six in this game. Ethan Long intercepts a pass. He returns it for a touchdown, but unfortunately for number 22, Donovan Heinisch got called for roughing the passer on the play. But Ethan Long was not to be denied, man. He still ended up getting an interception. He was getting emotional on the sideline. I thought that was really cool for the true freshman because, look, Notre Dame has had a bunch of big-time defensive back commits in recent years. Like last year, Dallas Golden and Mark Zachary, they were the big headliners in that class. And then in this next cycle, I mean, they loaded with studs, right? Joey O'Brien is a 5-star in some services. Kari Adams, same deal. So Notre Dame continues to bring in elite defensive backs, and Ethan Long kind of flew under the radar. So for him to go out there and make some plays in one of the first times like of his career that he's been able to get some real action is really cool for him. I'm sure that's going to be a confidence boost for him going forward. I know it's disappointing that he didn't get in the end zone, but still really good stuff from him. And honestly, the backups played really well. Matty Augustine and Will Black were looking good with the second-team offensive line. Like, they really did not miss a beat. And defensively, Manfremo came in, and he was making plays. He actually finished with 2 tackles for loss and a sack in this one. So that just shows you the type of depth that this Notre Dame team has, that even when they took out the starters, their backups came in, and they were making plays all over the field. So, game balls. We only have 2. We're going to give one. We got one on offense. We're going to give another on defense. On offense, I think you know who it's going to be. It's going to be Jeremiyah Love. 8 carries, 171 yards, and 3 touchdowns. I needed to repeat that because it is so absurd. Jeremiyah Love averaged 21.4 yards per rush. He was out there for 16 total plays in this game. So they basically rested him, and he still got to pad his stats, and he helped out his Heisman campaign. And look, I've been asked about Jeremiyah Love and his chances of winning the Heisman since the preseason. And I have maintained pretty much this entire time that I don't think he ever really had a shot at winning it because it's a quarterback-driven award, and I didn't think he would be able to put up the type of stats that you really need in order to win that award as a running back. I mean, just think about what Ashton Jeanty did last year. Jeanty had double the amount of rushing yards that Jeremiyah Love has this year, and he still came in second. Now, a little bit different because Travis Hunter was doing something that we had never seen before. So I always felt like it's going to be difficult for Love because he wouldn't have that level of production. But he might win it, man. He really might. He is plus 500 on FanDuel right now. He is tied with Julian Sand, and he's just a hair in front of Diego Pavia. Diego Pavia is not winning it. But he has a realistic chance of winning the Heisman now, certainly more so than I ever really considered before this, because Sand didn't have that best game this past weekend or the weekend before because Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith are out. Like, He's going to have a great opportunity to maybe bring it home when he goes on the road to play Michigan next Saturday. But if he doesn't play well and they just kind of get the win, and then you've got that Big Ten championship game where a lot of people think the Heisman is going to be decided between Fernando Mendoza, the quarterback of IU, and Julian Sayin, like those are two really good defenses. So what if that ends up being a defensive stalemate, and obviously one team's going to win, but neither Sayin or Mendoza really look that great? Does Jeremiyah Love sneak in and get the award? It's possible. I didn't think it was possible a few weeks ago, but after another performance like this, I don't know what more you can say about the guy. And also, I've noticed there's been a big push from people in the national media that says basically Jeremiyah Love is the best player in the country. What are we doing? He should get the award. Week after week after week, he continues to make spectacular plays, and he's just been lighting up the stat sheet. So a performance like this is perfect because he didn't take that many hits. He racked up a bunch of stats, and he is definitely getting invited to New York at this point. And like I said, he might even win it. And then on defense, got to give a game ball to Jalen Stroman. He obviously set the tone at the start of the game. He finished with 8 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, had the pick 6, and blocked the punt that led to another touchdown. Just a great story for him to not be denied. He gets his opportunity again after several weeks without that much of an opportunity, and he delivers with the best game he's ever played in an Irish uniform. And I can't say that I watched every game he played at Virginia Tech, but I would contest that's one of the best games of his career, if not the best. So congrats to Jeremiyah Love. Congrats to Jalen Stroman. Did want to give a shout-out to some other standouts from this game. Jason Onye, mentioned him earlier. 7 tackles, half a sack as well. And then Boubacar Traore was in the backfield all night long. He finished with 3 tackles for loss, and I'm pulling up his pressure stats right now. I mean, the entire Notre Dame defense had 29 total pressures in this game. Boubacar led the way with 4, and they just had no answer for him. So another great game for him. And Manfremo had to come in for Kyngstonn Viliamu-Asa. We'll get to him more in the upcoming segment here. But when he was out there, man, making plays, 5 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, including a sack. So offensively, defensively, a bunch of guys stood out, but I got to give the game ball to Jeremiyah Love and Jalen Stroman. So those are the stars of the show, and honestly, we could have given out 10 more game balls with how dominant that performance was, but now we have to shift to the big picture because the Irish also took a tough hit on the injury front, and the playoff race got a little clearer after a quiet weekend around college football. So let's talk about what this win really means moving forward. Coming up next on Locked On Irish. Today's episode is also brought to you by Gametime. College football is in full swing, and I could not be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It is the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up Gametime, and in just a couple taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games for as low as $25. The app made it super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying. I love the zone deals too. Just pick the section, Gametime picks the seats, and you save big. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. All right, welcome back to Sunday Night Live here on Locked On Irish. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. Thanks again to everyone who is tuning in live for the show. I know we're going to have some people tuning in on Monday, but I've loved doing this. We've been building a bigger audience week after week, and we'll be able to do another Sunday Night Live next weekend. Let's see what the chat has to say. Eric ND96, J Love has the drip that he does. This is pretty good also from Eric. The next roughing the passer penalty called against Notre Dame will be the first legitimate one. I would have to agree, man. Also, something funny that I just thought about during this game, like this was such a blowout. I felt bad for Dan Hicks and Jason Garrett for trying to make that game interesting, considering it was over in the second quarter. And they were coming up with all kinds of fun stuff and like these random stories to talk about. But when they started talking about CJ Carr and his favorite place to eat breakfast on Sundays, is like, yeah, they've already run out of stuff to talk about, and they have a lot more game left. But we do have to talk about the most negative thing that happened on Saturday. Kyngstonn Viliamu-Asa suffered a knee injury, and he is out for the rest of the season. Notre Dame made it official on Sunday. They had a press release. Also, Chance Tucker broke his tibia. Second year in a row that he suffered a pretty serious injury. I believe going into last season, he tore his ACL in fall camp, I believe it was. And then, this year he gets some action and on his senior day as well. So that's really unfortunate for him. But, man, that loss of Kyngstonn Viliamu-Asa is a big blow to the Irish defense because he's been incredible this year. He is fourth on the team in tackles, and he just does so many different things that not that many guys can do. Like on the season, he has 48 total tackles. He's got 3 sacks, an interception, fumble recovery against USC, 2 passes broken up. So he's just a really special player. And I understand that Notre Dame has some other really talented linebackers. Like they've still got Drake Bowen. They've still got Jay Osbury. And they've got Jalen Sneed, who's been playing better as of late. But KVA is just a different type of player, and it's a huge blow, man, because he had just been ascending this season, and I'm actually a little bit concerned about his long-term future. Like, eventually he's going to get healthy, and he's going to be an All-American. He'll be an NFL draft pick, all of that. Like, this isn't going to derail his football career. But considering the injury happened in late November, it's going to affect his next season. He's obviously going to be out for spring practice. I would imagine he's going to be limited during fall camp of next year. And you never really know how guys recover from these major knee surgeries because, for example, you had Mitchell Evans who suffered his knee injury in I believe it was late October of 2023 when he hurt it against Pitt. And he really wasn't the same player up until November of 2024. He played, but he didn't look like the Mitchell Evans that broke out onto the scene in 2023. But then you have guys like Boubacar Traore. He suffered his knee injury at the end of September, and he didn't really skip a beat. He went out there, he played a bunch of snaps against Miami, so you never really know how these guys are going to recover. Kyngstonn Viliamu-Asa is going to play for Notre Dame next season, but I'm hoping that he has a fast turnaround, and I actually got a text at halftime that KVA had suffered a serious injury and that he was crying in the tunnel, and immediately you're thinking, okay, well, if he's crying in the tunnel, he knows it's not good. But I was so confused because I never saw the play and then went back and watched, and then some other people pointed it out on social media. It looks like he got rolled up on back-to-back plays, but from the looks of it, he was just making a spin move that he's made a bunch of times throughout his career and then just went down awkwardly, and then he sat up immediately. He wasn't writhing in pain. He sat up, and he looked around, and he was like, uh-oh. You could kind of tell that something was off, got up, and immediately started walking off the field. But that's the freak thing about these knee injuries, man. Sometimes, you see a guy get rolled up on and it's very clear and obvious, but this was a non-contact injury. And Notre Dame had actually been having pretty decent luck on defense, at least, dealing with injuries. They had Devontae Smith with those lingering injuries, but then to have Tay Johnson go out and miss the remainder of the regular season, still do expect Tay Johnson to be back for the playoff. And you had the Gabriel Rubio injury, but overall, maybe just compared to last year, they were in pretty good shape. But unfortunately, this is what happens, especially this time of year after a long and grueling season. And Notre Dame proved that they have the depth. Last year, they proved it that they could make up for all those injuries. There's a bunch of talented dudes on this roster. So losing KVA is a blow, but they're still really talented at linebacker. And to see a freshman like Man Framo come on the scene and play really well on Saturday has to help ease your nerves a little bit, but still you'd love to have number 27 out there on the field. So that is definitely going to impact Notre Dame going forward. But also let's talk about the rest of the weekend in college football because it was a chalky weekend. Every single team ranked 1 through 14 either won the game or they had a bye week. So I doubt we're going to see a ton of movement in the college football playoff rankings come Tuesday. USC's loss to Oregon definitely hurts. If they had won that game, I think Notre Dame would have jumped Oregon. They would potentially be in position to host a college football playoff game, but it just looked like the same old USC team, man. For all that talk about how they had turned a corner after that win over Iowa, it just looked like the same team that Notre Dame handled in South Bend. They couldn't stop Oregon's rushing attack, and they made brutal mistakes in special teams, and that's what cost him. You would think that after this many years of watching his team make mistakes and crucial errors and watch game-changing plays happen for the other team on special teams, Lincoln Riley would put more of an emphasis on the third phase of the game, but he has yet to do that, and it cost him once again on Saturday because the score was tied 14-14. Oregon had a 85-yard punt return for a touchdown, and that was pretty much it. USC was never able to come back after that. But Notre Dame did get some help from none other than Pat Narduzzi, the head coach of Pittsburgh, who did everything he possibly could to blow a 28-point lead over Georgia Tech, but they were able to pull off the win. I had my doubts because they were up 28-0 in the first half, and you're thinking they're going to cruise. And then Georgia Tech fought back. It was 28-14. They were going in to score another touchdown, but then Haynes King, who I like, by the way, just threw an absolutely brutal pick six. Brutal for him. And then Pitt went up, and then they had some cushion. They ended up winning that game. Let's see, what was the final score there? It was, 42-28, and that's big for Notre Dame for a couple reasons. One, Pitt is going to be ranked this week. They fell out of the top 25 once Notre Dame embarrassed them on their home field, and now they're going to be back in because they knocked off Georgia Tech, who was 9-1 going into that game. Pretty disappointing performance from Georgia Tech because if they won that game, they clinch a spot in the ACC championship, but they just got dominated at the beginning of the game, and then the deficit was too much to overcome. So now Notre Dame's going to have 2 ranked wins, which helps. But also, I think Utah's win over Kansas State will help them as well. Because Utah, first of all, they were doing everything they could to lose that game. Kansas State was running all over them, which you rarely see, especially for a Utah home game. Utah ended up coming back to win 51-47. They gave up, 472 rushing yards. Kansas State rushed for 11 yards per carry, and they lost. So credit to Dampier, the quarterback of Utah, leading that charge there at the end. And I believe that helps Notre Dame because Utah is ranked between Notre Dame and Miami. Notre Dame is ranked 9th. Miami was ranked 13th in the latest college football ranking. So there's between them, you got Alabama, who beat a cupcake team because it was the cupcake week in the SEC. BYU, who beat a feisty Cincinnati team on the road. Vanderbilt destroyed Kentucky, and then you've got Miami. So is Miami really going to jump 4 spots after they beat Virginia Tech 34-17? And by the way, it should have been 27-17, but Mario Cristobal called a timeout late to throw a touchdown pass so that they could get a little bit more points for all those box score watchers out there. So I was pissed off in that moment. I thought there was a chance here that Virginia Tech could cut it to 27-24. They weren't able to do that. Miami ends up winning that game by 17 points, but I just find it really hard to believe that after a game like that, Miami is all of a sudden going to be vaulted over all those teams. Actually, I got that wrong. Miami was 14 in the AP, or 14 in the college football playoff. I'm looking at the AP rankings right now, but there's a chance that the College Football Playoff Committee could put Miami over Utah. If they do that, it could get a little bit tricky because then they would be in the same pool, as they call it, and Notre Dame could be compared with Miami head-to-head. But right now, I still think they're in pretty good shape. Considering all those teams won, I'm expecting chalk. But look, no matter what happens here, as I said earlier, you can debate resumes with me, but you cannot tell me that this Notre Dame team isn't one of the best teams in the country. They are clearly a elite football team, and I think the committee needs to just be very honest when they have when they're going to inevitably be asked about Notre Dame on Tuesday night. The committee chairman can't talk about the quality losses. Just be honest. They clearly view Notre Dame as a top 5 team because they are a top 5 team. But unfortunately for them, they lost 2 games at the start of the season, so you can't rank them ahead of the 1-loss teams, but you can rank them ahead of most of the 2-loss teams because Oklahoma did get another ranked win. They're going to stay ahead of Notre Dame, even though Missouri is probably going to fall out of the top 25 this week. So you can't put them in front of Oklahoma, but I think you can easily put them against or put them over all the other 2-loss teams because Notre Dame is clearly one of the best teams in college football. They're playing better than anyone else in college football, and they have a great chance of winning in the national championship. And if the entire purpose of the College Football Playoff Committee is to put the best teams in the playoff to win a national championship, then what are we doing? Notre Dame is clearly one of the best teams, and there's not much to debate about that. All right, that is going to do it for tonight's Sunday Night Live. Thank you to everyone who tuned in live, and for those of you tuning in on Monday, thank you for making this your first watch or listen of the day. If you enjoyed the episode, please make sure that you are subscribed on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to like the video, rate the podcast, and leave a quick review. It really helps us grow. I'm going to be back on Tuesday with Luke Smith for his Boots on the Ground report from the game. Plus, we'll read our favorite fan submission. So if you were in the stadium, send in your report, and we might feature it on the show. We're going to break down the 3 things we liked And I guess we're going to have to try to find a couple things we didn't like, although after a 70-7 win, that might take some effort. So thanks again for watching or listening. Enjoy the rest of your night, and I will see you on Tuesday.